Welcome back to my Mental Health and Crime channel. My name is Hootie London. This is the case of the Idaho quadruple murders. May the victims rest in peace, condolence to their families, and may the correct justice be served. There's been discussions about having cameras in the court. Brian Christopher Kohlberger has been charged for 4 counts of murders and for a burglary. The public should have right to see this trial. Transparency is really important. The press, media are arguing and debating with the judge to keep the cameras rolling. Although this is a high-profile case, I do understand, in defense to Brian Kohlberger, if he doesn't want cameras, it is due to people are focusing on the wrong places of his body. Trigger warning. That has been said, and I think that is so unnecessary because people have to remember and keep in mind, be mindful that 4 young students have lost their life. Their parents are grieving. Justice should be served, and Brian Kohlberger is entitled to a correct, transparency trial.
Is what
She was trapped.
She was trapped. Trapped. That's how the mother of Idaho murder victim Kaylee Gonsalves describes how her daughter died in a new interview about the case, as prosecutors and defense attorneys asked to close an upcoming hearing to the public.
So this notion that the state and the defense can get together to keep cameras out is ill-founded. Let's just put it that way.
Thanks for joining us here on Law and Crime. I'm Anjanette Levy. Kaylee Gonsalves' parents have revealed new details they say they learned from the coroner about how their daughter died. Kaylee Gonsalves, her best friend, Maddie Mogan, their roommate, Xana Kernodle, and Kernodle's boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, were all stabbed to death in a house near the University of Idaho campus last November. The case has captured the attention of people around the world. Brian Kohlberger, a Washington State University PhD student, has pleaded not guilty to the murders. In an episode of 48 Hours, Kaylee Gonsalves' parents said the county coroner told them that Maddie Mogan was killed first. Kaylee was killed second. She was sleeping in the bed with her best friend.
Yeah, there's evidence to show that she awakened and tried to get out of that situation.
The new information comes as Brian Kohlberger is due back in court this week. His lawyers are asking Judge John Judge to dismiss the indictment. They claim the grand jurors were biased and that mistakes were made in the process, but mystery still surrounds some of the specific claims because the motion is sealed. Now the defense and the prosecution have filed paperwork agreeing to close the hearing to the public, but there's one problem with that, according to First Amendment lawyer Jack Reiner.
Well, I think that the idea that the defense and the state can get together and close a hearing just by their own agreement is just simply not the case. There are other stakeholders, there are other people with interest, including the families who is, from my reading, there's a desire that the cameras be in the courtroom by at least some families of the victims. The other stakeholder, obviously, is the public, and the public is represented by the media.
Greiner has argued on behalf of media outlets in courts for years. In fact, he was part of a coalition that included Law and Crime during a high-profile trial in Ohio last year. To close a courtroom, the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press says the judge must hold a hearing on the need for secrecy and allow the media and others to argue against closure. It's a rule from the U.S. Supreme Court. Closing courtrooms is rare in criminal cases.
It is a huge outlier, the idea of closing the courtroom entirely, that the public can't come in for any purpose, is separate and apart from having cameras in the courtroom, that there has to be a compelling need for the closure and that there are no less restrictive means. So it's up to the state and the defense, I guess, since they both want the hearing closed, to come up to articulate a compelling need for the closure. There's nothing in the stipulated motion that articulates a compelling need to close this proceeding, and there's certainly no suggestion of any less restrictive means. So the motion on its face is really defective, and if the court were to close this proceeding entirely without a hearing, that would be automatically subject to appellate review, that the Media Coalition, I'm sure, would go to the appellate level in Idaho and seek what would be a writ of mandamus to ensure that the court be open during these proceedings.
The issue of having cameras in the courtroom for the trial is a separate issue. Media outlets, including Law and Crime, have argued to keep cameras in the courtroom during the trial. Greiner has argued on behalf of many media outlets many times to keep cameras in the courtroom.
Public ought to know about what's happening at a mass murder, a trial of an alleged mass murderer, and the more the public knows, the better for everybody involved.
Just not yet made a decision on the issue of cameras in the courtroom.
I personally believe that there should be cameras in the courtroom so that there is transparency. It's important to know exactly what evidence the prosecution has, since everything is on gag order. We have the defense attorney, Ann Taylor, who's been asking and pleading for the evidence to be handed over. There is 3 unidentified male evidence in this case, inside and outside the house. Brian Koberger, his touch DNA was found on the knife sheet. But how did it get there? They have to prove their case in the courts so that the jury can make the correct decision. Everything seems to be on gag order, and if this continues like that, it may end up going further into the Brady's law, because Brian Koberger is entitled to see all the evidence that they're holding against him. I personally don't believe the timelines match with what he's charged for. We were given the timeline of 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. that the murders took place. And I believe that timeline is right, because there was a lot of things going on. We had the 5 figures or 4 figures running. We've seen on the grub truck video suspicious people with suspicious behaviors. We don't know what happened to the 4 victims, but we know that there was a fight in the Sigma Chi fraternity party. Eaton, Xana, and BF were all there. Nobody knows the timelines of the couple. When did they come home? How come nobody in the party is confirming where Eaton and Xana were from 9:45 to 1:45 p.m.? Somebody must have seen them. Did they walk home? Did they get a ride home? Did something happen on the way home? Was somebody waiting for them inside the house? We've heard that Brian Koberger came to the place at 4:05. We just saw a white car, but we don't know if it was Brian Koberger. They were searching for Hyundai Elantra from the model of 2011 to 2013. Brian Koberger drives a 2015 white Elantra. So if he was around there, does he have friends there? Could BF have called him there? Could Dylan have called him there? Why was he there? There has to be transparency. This is a man's life online. Brian Koberger doesn't have a criminal record. In fact, he was a teacher. We hear rumors and speculations from ex-friends of his who say that he had addictions with heroin. But let's not forget that is all he and she say. We don't have proof of anything yet. And nobody is guilty yet. They have to prove his guilt by handing over the evidence. Where's the evidence? Why is everything on a gag order? I showed you all a good example of Melly's case, the rapper. The prosecutor has been removed from the case because they breached the Brady's law. Brian Koberger is entitled to a fair trial, and the victims are entitled to the correct justice. Why was the Sigma Chi fraternity under a microscope? Why were they under investigation? How come they don't have cameras in their premises? Everyone's innocent until proven guilty. I personally need to see more evidence and more transparency. They need to take off the gag orders. In a couple of weeks' time, it's going to be the 1-year anniversary of these 4 innocent victims. Justice needs to be served correctly, and if Brian is responsible for unliving these 4 people, he deserves what's coming to him. But if he's innocent, he deserves the fair justice. May the victims rest in peace. Please like, share, and subscribe. May justice be served.